Hello, welcome to Miniature Realms. My name's Stuart. Armies of Great Britain is very nearly here for Bolt Action version 3. I've already reviewed the book that Warlord Games very kindly sent me, and I'll pop a little link in the video description now so you can go and check that out if you haven't already. Warlord Games very kindly sent me a few frames of the new Winter Brit, so let's have a look at these and get one painted.
Miniature Realms is proudly sponsored by Counter-Attack Bases. They stock a wide range of counters, gaming aids and movement trays for multiple game systems and offer custom items to suit your club or even your podcast or YouTube channel. Check out the link in the video description.
So the frames are from this kit, the British and Canadian Infantry Winter Platoon, and they're also going to be in the Crossing of the Rhine Starter Army set as well, and they're out at the end of July, I believe, at time of recording this. So this is earlier on in July, so depending on when you're watching this, they may already be out, and they are winter British, and you've got leather jerkins and things like that. It's supposed to be designed for use sort of around the Battle of the Bulge or sort of early spring 1945, that kind of period of the war. You've got all your standard weaponry in there as well, loads of different head options and things, as you'll see in a moment when I show the frames off. And then you've got lots of other kit as well, so there's another flamethrower, I believe, and there's a Piat and lots of little extra things like engineer tools, which is quite cool, so sort of minesweepers and spades and bits. So there's quite a lot on the kit, and I can imagine it being really interesting for people to kit bash with some of the other standard British and Canadian kits and things as well, even for non-winter periods. I imagine some of the kit might be quite useful, quite cool, I think. Now you're able to go and look at really clear sprue images of on the website anyway, and there's an article on their community site talking about what's on there, and they're all listed and there's pictures on there. I'll just give you my own thoughts on them. They're very much the sort of modern kits that you get from Warlord Games. Pretty simple, the body's all in one piece, the weapons are most cases are when they're holding a rifle or something in two arms, are holding it well, so it won't take too long to build. Most of the packs and things are on the miniatures apart from their backpacks, and they're pretty crisp and clean. They are very, very nice sculpts in terms of the aesthetics. I love the faces. There's some really, really interesting faces on there as well. In terms of their accuracy, I will leave that up to experts more on World War II, but I quite like them. It's definitely an extremely versatile kit with your tam-o-shanters and things. You can make your Scottish troops, you can make some commanders and things in the winter. You really can do quite a lot with it, and that's why I think that as an overall kit, definitely kit bash with others and things as well. I think that's some good use, some good utility here. I did see a little bit of criticism early on when they first announced on some of the Facebook groups, but more people were just saying they're a little bit not quite as excited about them as the German veterans, etc. I wasn't really sure what to make of them, but now I've painted one of them and had the kits in hand. I think they're pretty good, actually. I quite like it. I am tempted to do a little bit more with them. But anyway, let's get painting the miniature. I've built him primed in black. I quite like the pose that I went for. It was really easy to build and stick together, no sort of separate parts and things really. And I'm going to be using this set of AK paints for World War II British that they kindly sent me. And I'm going to be sticking to as many of these as I can to see how well they work as a set. And I'm starting here with this lovely rich brown British uniform colour. Now I'm airbrushing here. This is the only bit of airbrushing I'm doing in the whole thing. So if you don't use an airbrush, don't worry about this. You can just paint in a base layer. I'm going all over, and I'm going slightly from the top, or a little bit heavier from the top. And by building up a subtle layer like this through the airbrush and getting a little bit heavier on the second pass, I'm leaving a little bit of shadow in the recesses, which helps with the shadows later on the miniature. You obviously get around that by doing washes and things, but I don't do a wash on this. That's not the style I'm painting on this miniature. As you can see, as I'm building up the second layer, the first layer was like a light dusting, and giving everything a faint coating apart from in the undercuts. This second layer is really sort of bringing that paint up to its full colour and making it a little bit stronger on the top side of the miniature again. So it looks like you've got 2 or 3 different variations of that brown there. For the next stage, I'm using that same British uniform but mixing in the green brown. This is from that set as well. It's 50-50 mix on the wet palette, a touch of water but not much at all. And I'm just focusing on the folds of the clothing and the upper halves, the upper parts of those, just to kind of bring that colour up a little bit. And because we've done all that work with the airbrush to start with, we've already got a bit of a transition between light and dark, and this is just accentuating where the light would catch on the tops of those folds of clothing. So very simple layering that you do in standard painting, like those first stages I've done with the airbrush. And if you are just painting a flat British uniform first and not using the airbrush, you can still go ahead and do this. You may want to add a little wash afterwards and then go back and tidy this up, or add a wash first, and then your uniform brown, and then this is the top highlight. It really depends on how you want to do it. I've sped up that first stage by using the airbrush, and that's just the way I like to paint. I do appreciate that not everyone else does it that way. So just to recap, if you don't want to use the airbrush, still use that uniform brown, maybe give it a wash of your favourite wash, and then go in with the uniform brown again to tidy up and use this as your highlight. But because I've skipped all of that stage by using the airbrush, it means this is kind of my first real stage. And then it's that green brown colour on its own as the main highlight. So for me, it's the second highlight. If you are working without the airbrush and you're going through that wash stage, this may well be your third part of your process, really. But so far, only really used 2 paints, which is pretty good, and they mix together so well, these AK paints. They're really, really good. I'm very impressed with them. Only started using them recently. I tend to use them mostly on historical stuff rather than fantasy and science fiction, and they just work really well for it. I know a lot of people have been using them for years, but if you haven't tried them out before, and there's a lot of brands out there doing stuff for World War II at the moment, including new Army Painter stuff, which I haven't tried yet, but I found these just to be excellent and so easy to use, and work so well with the wet palette. Require very little thinning actually, and they just feather out and blend really well, and they mix together really well as well, which is very important. So just taking my time, working my way all the way around the miniature and really focusing on the tops of those folds, so leaving those darker colours in those recesses. With each layer, my brush strokes are getting thinner and thinner. They're not quite thin edge highlights, but they're very, very close to it. I'm not being too bold on this miniature. I'm leaving them quite subtle. You'll see that when it dries, there's nothing that pops incredibly. Just trying to keep it quite plain and a military style rather than more of a fantasy style, but I do like quite bold transitions at times, so I have to control myself a little bit. But working my way around using these 2 paints to create this sort of multi-layer highlight stage. Now at this stage we haven't touched any of the packs and webbing, and I'm using this top highlight, this green brown here, just to lift up on the packs and webbing. Obviously we got the brown on for that initial airbrushing, but I'm just jumping straight to this without a mid-tone and filling this out most of the area, just leaving those darkest recesses in the shade. And then taking that green brown with a 50-50 mix of the decomposed flesh, which this is all still in that British set from AK. Again, 50-50 mix on the wet palette, and going in and doing the first highlight, but this is just on the webbings and packs, pouches and bags, etc. I'm just using the edge of my brush here to pick out the edges of that backpack, so you've still got those darker areas in the recesses, but you're using the edge of the brush just to add a little bit of highlight to the edges here. And it's amazing how it starts to kind of look like the right colour for that part of equipment and stand out a little bit from the rest of the uniform. I notice on the studio paint scheme they are a very, very light green colour. I don't know how right that is from any of the reference pictures I've found, but with anything military uniform you could argue about it for hours, and I'm never too worried as long as it generally looks right on the miniature on the table. That's the most important thing. This is Contrast Cygor Brown, so the first paint that's not from that set at the moment. It's just a really nice rich reddish brown. Because it's a contrast paint as well, it'll go on really smoothly and really easily. I'm trying to keep it away from anything that's the finished uniform or the webbing or the packs and etc. So I'm just carefully painting in everywhere that will be the leather tunic. Because it's a contrast paint as well, it does show a little bit of a lighting area through it as well, as the paint shows through what is a thinner paint. And then it's AK Red Brown, so back to that set, and I'm using this as the first highlight. And I can follow along on that contrast paint. As I said, it's thinner, so it works a bit like a glaze, and it's showing all of the previous paint job just through it subtly. That's what contrast style paints are designed to do. So I'm almost colouring in those lighter areas now with this lighter red brown, so leaving that dark sort of rich brown that was the contrast paint in all those recesses, that kind of real dark leathery colour, and just painting in highlights the same way I did on the rest of the miniature. And then that same red brown, this time 50-50 mix with a Denison tan base. Again on the wet palette, very little water on there because they mix together so nicely on the palette. And I'm going back and doing a further highlight on that leather, making sure these are a little bit thinner now, so you're showing the original contrast layer and you're showing that red brown layer as well. I'm just really focusing on thinner lines towards the top of the folds in the clothing, or around the bottom of the leather jerkin, or on the edge at the top, anywhere there's a little bit of an edge, like a hard edge around near the collar or cuff or something like that. And it just kind of tidies it up, gives you 3 layers of highlighting, and it really starts to pop and stand out a little bit more. Still trying to keep it subtle as I did with the other layers. I don't want to really jump out as crazy levels of contrast here, but you can still see a visible separation between those top highlights on the worn leather and those darker bits in the recesses. A bit of standard AK black. This is really good stuff. It's a real good standard black to own if you don't already have a go-to black. I use this quite a lot. Painting in the gun, and I'm painting in the boots as well. Returning to colours we've already used, we've got the Denison tan base and then the decomposed flesh. And I'm just painting over the top of the helmet covering. And the bit I read in the article about these would be often made from bed sheets and things, sometimes white in the snow. I've decided to go for a slightly off brown colour using the palette that I already have. I figured if it's a bit of uniform that's being used, this would work, but also if it was something that was borrowed from a farmhouse or someone's home as an old pillowcase or something, then maybe it wouldn't be the best colour. So going in with that Denison colour first, which was one of the lighter colours that I used on the miniature for the highlights, but then afterwards when I start mixing in that decomposed flesh, you start to get a bit of a creamy white on there. Again, you could paint them all different kind of colours if you wanted to. Depends how snowy you want to make the bases and things as well, whether you want to make it small or full snow uniform, but I figured that this works at the time, and when you see the finished miniature, I think it feels about right. It definitely looks like something that's believable. Now for a little bit of contrast skeleton horde. This is extremely light in pigment, and there's 2 ways to do this really. You can thin it out a lot and slop it on, or do what I'm doing here is just glaze on very, very thin layers. And all it's doing is just knocking back the brightness of some of those top highlights and all of the webbing and the more tan areas, all of the extra equipment. I feel like it just knocks it back enough so it doesn't jump out and look too bright, especially if they've been on campaign for a while. These things are going to be grimy and dirty. They're not going to look like they've just come off the parade ground at all. It just sort of takes the harsh edge a little bit off some of that, the brightest of those edge highlights, and I quite like the effect. As much as I want it to pop, it just softens it down a little bit and actually tidies up your paint job. This is Barbarian Brawn, Dwarven Skin and Elven Skin, a nice triad of skin colours from Two Thin Coats range, and they convert very well to Citadel colours if you use those. I don't have any flesh colours from AK at the moment, so this isn't an all AK painting tutorial, I'm afraid. I've just gone to one of my favourite sort of recipes for them. Very simple, 3 layers. So you start with the Barbarian Brawn, and then I'm just layering up with each of those other 2 colours. I like to focus on the nose and cheekbones, and then the sides of the cheeks and the chin, leaving the dark in the recesses. And as we move up to the next layer, you do the same again. And it's exactly the same method when you get to the hands as well. So you're focusing on the individual fingers, the knuckles, and a little bit onto the top half of the hand as well. And as you move on to those top highlights, you're just getting a little bit thinner each time. So layering the same way as we have with all the uniform on the jerkin, pretty much the rest of the miniature. I always find that a miniature that always looks good with it, a sort of 3 layers of colouring at least, a base, a mid-tone and a highlight, and then it just really makes a difference rather than just a base and a highlight. This is very much an optional extra, but this is Vulpes Pink and Shige Purple contrast paints, and I've got this on my wet palette, and I've thinned the Vulpes Pink, not so much the Shige Purple. And with the Shige Purple is a colder colour, and I just edge it around the cuffs and usually around the sides of the helmet or the hairline. In this case there's a balaclava as well, and it just adds a little bit of depth and a dark colour into those recesses. You can also use it in eye sockets and things as well before you paint your eyes in. It was quite useful. And then I use a bit of the Vulpes Pink in a different way. It's thin, so it's not too strong, but it adds a little bit of warmth to the face. I like to put it on the bottom third of a face, and just by putting on the bottom third, it just makes it look a little bit like there's some blood there. And in cold weather, then that looks quite good as well. If you've got a slightly red nose, it works well on the tops of the hands and things as well. This next bit is extremely simple. This is an artist pencil, a soft pencil, so looking at something in the B range. I think this might just be a 2B, but it works absolutely fine. And I'm just running it over the black weapon. Yeah, so we don't want a nice shiny silver weapon. We want it to look like blued steel. And this is just a really easy way of doing that. You can use a gunmetal paint color or something as well, but this just couldn't be easier. You can't really get the paint anywhere you don't want, because you're not using paint, and just rubbing it across the weapon like this leaves loads and loads of black in the recesses, and it's pretty simple. Now I'm using some AK wet ground, and they sent this to me ages ago actually. It's really, really good stuff, and it sort of, when it dries, it looks like it's a little bit wet still. As you can imagine, that's why it's called wet ground. And I'm placing some 2mm tufts here from Warpaint Figures in the UK. Sounds like a big product placement thing. I love these. I don't get any kickback from recommending either of these things for you, but they're just tools that I like to use. But very, very good tufts. Go and check them out. This is Snow Sprinkles, another AK product, but I just really love their basing stuff. A lot of it's very similar to the Vallejo ranges, but I've started using the AK stuff recently. I think I prefer it. I think it's a little bit better. There's a bit more in the range, a little bit more realistic. Now this stuff, the way it dries a little bit like melting snow, so it goes a little bit more subtle. I'm able just to put a little bit on tops of the tufts, so you look like you've got that snow that's trapped into long grass. As you can see, the grass sort of poking through, but also putting little dots on the earth as well, as if it's starting to thaw and melt a little bit, so you've still got the mud showing through. It makes quite a nice effect. And that's your British Tommy, all done in winter style, but it's never quite as easy to see like this. So I've taken some pictures. Let's have a look at those. Lots of fun doing this. I had no plans for doing any winter British. I've actually bought some standard British and Canadian infantry, and then I stopped working on them because I figured that's what they might bring out, do a redesign on them. And there was a little bit of me that was slightly disappointed when the new frames were going to be these winter ones. And then there was the initial reaction. I didn't dislike them, but I also wasn't super excited about them, and I don't know if it was the paint job or what it was, but I wasn't sure. But it was super easy to build, really nice, and they paint up so easily, and that's one of the most appealing things. It just paints up so nicely. There's nothing that's hard to get to. The uniforms are quite simple, very small color palette, as you've seen here. I use very, very few paints, and this miniature only took me probably 90 minutes to paint or something like that, and that's while painting for a video, when there's lots of different things I do. I hold myself in a different way because I'm holding it in front of the camera, and all of those kind of things that go into producing a video. I really enjoy painting it. The faces are fantastic. I'm not sure if it's just me, but I think this guy looks like England opener Zach Crawley. A couple of people will get that, a couple of people won't. I think it's just the facial expression. But again, really enjoyed these. I'm quite tempted to build and paint the rest up that I was sent, and go with some of the British tanks I've already got ready and painted, and end up with a little winter force that I wasn't actually planning on doing. But thanks very much, Warlord Games, for sending it. Really enjoyed doing it. Let me know what you think of the paint job. As always, thank you very much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and those of you who follow the channel for things that are other Warhammer the Old World, I know sometimes it can seem a little bit like you have to wait a couple of weeks here and then before a non-square based fantasy video comes along, so I hope you've enjoyed this one if you're still watching. I love bolt action, I love all of the games that Warlord Games do, and I will continue to do other game systems other than Games Workshop ones on this channel, but there will sometimes be larger gaps in between. So thank you for your patience if you do support the channel just for the non-Games Workshop stuff, but I know many of you like it all and watch an awful lot of the videos for the different painting tips and things. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Thank you very much to AK again for supplying the paints which I used for this tutorial. I really appreciate the support for those, and do check out all of the Great Britain stuff or any other bolt action stuff over on the Warlord Games website. There is an affiliate link for that in my video description. If you have enjoyed the video, do all the usual stuff, give it a like, drop a comment below, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Please check out my Patreon, because it really is one of the best ways you can support the channel and give me more time to make more videos like this. Sounds a little bit cheesy. I would love to put out 4 or 5 videos a week if I really could, and really increase the range of different game systems on there. Unfortunately, it's usually 2 videos a week because I have to do other work as well, so the more patrons I have is the more time I can put into doing bolt action, doing epic, and all those other things. So do check it out. If you're able to support me, I'll greatly appreciate it. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I'll catch you soon.